Hello, everybody. Welcome to Cairo Secure Look to the Children Show. It's Dr. B and Elizabeth. How you doing today, Lizzie? I'm doing fabulous. I'm living the dream. That's what we want to hear, and hopefully all of you are living the dream too. So she's going to take a nap while you and I hang out, and she'll be back to wish you a goodbye. All right, Elizabeth. So here we are. It's February, middle of February already. You guys are all probably surviving the post Valentine's Day crash, which is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about seeing red, aluminum, and lead. Ooh, fun times ahead. So, first of all, I want to, this is part 2 of our In the Know series, where we're going to bring you some really fun information with regard to things to think about in the neurodevelopmental realm that we can help our patients to ensure a the best trajectory of development for their little fiddle fiddle parts. So we're going to go to the slides and dive in a little bit and see what we got cooking in the kitchen. In the Know, part 2, seeing red, aluminum, and lead. All right, let's do this. And again, Cairo Secure, thank you so much for giving us this platform, for always being there for us and the kiddos and those docs in practice. So, couple things we should know is there are imposters out there. Yes, they're lurking in the labels. When we talk about red dye, so that's what we're going to start out with is red dye, because we just came off of a red dye quote unquote holiday. And you might be seeing little fiddle farts in your practice now that are not exactly in the best of moods. They might be a little aggressive, a little crazy brain. Okay. So, labels. We want to help parents understand where things are lurking because it's not always obvious. Lots of times, dyes are used in things that are bland in color, like Cheerios. They don't have much color, right? But you'd be surprised what lurks in our foods, or you wouldn't be surprised. I know you wouldn't be surprised, but we have to help our parents understand this. So red dye oftentimes is found in chocolate. We just came off of a holiday fest or a Valentine's Day fest of chocolate. So these are some colors, these are some names that are imposters to red dye 40. So I'm honing in on red dye 40 today, but of course we know that all dyes have some potential consequences, um, largely so on the nervous system. Dyes can make the neurons in the brain go crazy brain. They just fire, 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 rapid fire, rapid fire, rapid fire, and then the neurons just die out. I don't know about you, but I certainly can't afford to lose any neuronal integrity these days. And we really don't want our little fiddle farts, um, their neuroplastic development being compromised. So we're honing on red 40 for a reason today, but we need to look across the board on dyes. Red 40's got the biggest bum rap. There's a lot of other countries that have banned dyes in their foods. They will not allow foods that are manufactured in the US sent over if they have dyes in them. And there was an act that I believe passed the Senate, but never passed the House, but never passed the Senate on removing dyes from our foods. We're still kind of waiting on that. So we have different colors of red dye 40 or different names for it. Allura red is a big one you'll see. The thing that gets people are these initials CI 16035. Okay. People are like, what is that? Kind of the rule of thumb is if somebody doesn't know a product when they read a label, if they don't know what that is, if your grandmother didn't know what that ingredient was, don't buy it. 5 ingredients or more, don't buy it. Those are kind of some general rules of thumb that you might want to give your parents to think about. When you have an apple, what's the ingredient of an apple? It's an apple. When you buy something packaged or processed, what's the ingredients in here? If they can't pronounce it, if they don't know what it is, if their grandmother didn't know what it was, not a good choice. So be sure to know these imposters of Red 40. The reason I'm covering Red 40, that's the one that really tends to be really associated with um, migraines, big time with migraines, with mood disorders, with anxiety, with ADD, with ADHD. It's the most prevalent in our society, so it's a big kahuna. So this is an interesting slide. This was from Dr. Amen, Daniel Amen's practice, and he looked at a, a teenager, I believe it was a teen, before and after the exposure of red dye 40. Now look at that brain activity. This is exactly what I'm talking about, is those dyes just light up the brain like a fireworks in there. This is why we see the anger, the rage, the impulsivity, the inability to concentrate, all those things that come along with when these things are ingested. So lots of time, education for parents or for patients in general can be auditory, visual, and kinesthetic. When we use those three elements in education, it can be very powerful. So sometimes seeing that this is potentially you or your child's brain on red dye. Back in the olden days, we had a commercial that says, "Is this your brain on drugs?" And it was a fried egg. They cracked an egg and fried it in the frying pan. It's this visual analogy. So maybe something that you want to consider looking at. If this is actually a great time for you, if you're seeing the post Valentine's Day crazy brain blues, um, could be a good way to start approaching that in or that subject as far as why their little fiddle fart might be not be um, having such a great few days. When we ingest foods that are not so great for our body and our nervous system, the rule of thumb is about a 72-hour window of chaos in the brain. So that 72 hours is often comprised of extraneuronal firing. Just so again, poor sleep, inattentive, aggressive, those type of ADHD, okay, inability to focus, behavior can be a huge issue here. And again, as chiropractors, we want to calm the nervous system, right? We want to adjust into calm and not chaos. So sometimes these little fiddle farts are hard to adjust at this point in time because they are overfiring. So it might not be the best time to work with them. That 72-hour windows is usually that crazy storm brain. And then after that, it kind of drops off and they can get the brain blues where they're more depressed, blah, so forth. So you've got about a week in there. That's not the best time for these kiddos. But again, if you see those kiddos' behaviors coming into your practice, you might be a good opportunity to educate parents on what might be going on. The other little caveat that you want to look for is oftentimes with chemical imbalances, whether it be something they ate or an environmental chemical, cleaning products are a big one. They'll come in and they'll have red cheeks. Their cheeks are bright red or their ears are bright red. That's oftentimes a chemical reaction. And then put that together with if they've had trouble at school, concentrating behavior, they're acting out at home, at school, in your office. These are good educational points to talk to parents about. You see the red ears, red cheeks, the behavior. That's a little good in to talk about. And again, you might need to do less adjusting, not as many segments. The brain's a ready and crazy brain. Less is more always in today's paradigm, especially with kiddos. But you might need to do more calming techniques. So just a caveat there, but look at it's very telling in how lit up that brain gets. Now, the other thing I want to bring forth is not only do we know specifically with red dye 40 that it causes this crazy brain, they're seeing that it's actually has destructive properties to the gut. This is pretty cool, where they're seeing red dye associated with IBS signs and symptoms. So let's think about this for a minute. IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, can either be IBS with constipation or IBS with diarrhea. And it can wax and wane. So a lot of times in these kiddos, we see waxing and waning bowel movements, constipation to diarrhea and everything in between. But the mechanism, the pathway that they saw with regard to red dye 40 and the IBS had to do with the serotonin pathway. Bada bing, bada boom, bada bang, serotonin. Neurotransmitter in the brain. 80 to 90% of it is manufactured, is synthesized in the gut. Serotonin is. So if we have high serotonin, we can have loose bowels. If we have low serotonin, we can have constipation. But we all know the connection between the gut-brain and brain-gut axis. So this lends itself to some information with regard to another way that red dye in particular may be affecting brain activity. So if you see individuals after these glorious holidays with tons of red dye everywhere, start having gut issues, that's another little caveat to for educational purposes in your practices, to put that connection with red dye, gut issues, gut brain issues. So this is it's fun and exciting new information that's coming out and things that are really pertinent to us. From a developmental standpoint, from a neurodevelopmental trajectory standpoint, these are things that are really we need to look at in order to foster optimal neurodevelopment. I got a beautiful paper last night on a research review of the microbiome and neurodevelopment, where this is an absolute pivotal point that we need to understand. That we understand that the microbiome, the gut, is influencing the way the brain on neurodevelopment, and especially in those first 2 years of life. Neuroplastic changes on the brain. So it's not something that we need to negate at all. It is, if you're working with kids in your practice and you're working with kids with neurodevelopmental challenges, this is really a key point. And I hammer this in my educational mentoring programs because it is so pivotal. So red dye affects the brain, affects the gut, affects the gut-brain axis, affects your feel-good chemical serotonin. What does it have to do with lakes? It's a beautiful picture, right? A beautiful picture of a lake, nice and calm, serene. What does lakes have to do with dyes? Here's the deal. On ingredients, on some packages, you will see maybe yellow dye lake, or yellow 5 with lake, or red 40 lake. If it says lake with it, what it's saying is it is a substance that they use in order for that dye to adhere or stick to whatever food source they're putting it on. And lakes are aluminum based. Not a good deal for the brain. So that's why I'm saying we're seeing red, aluminum, and lead in this little program today. Lakes, again, aluminum is really toxic, neurotoxic to the brain. It is very toxic to the developing brain. And it can kill off these, what we call Purkinje cells within the cerebellum. And that cerebellum is so huge. It's part of what I call the 3-brain complex that is so huge in neurodevelopmental challenges. The cerebellum, the limbic system, and that prefrontal cortex. So lakes equal aluminum associated with the dyes so they can adhere to the product. Aluminum kills off Purkinje cells, which make the neurotransmitter GABA. If GABA's out the window, your brain is not serene or surreal like this. It doesn't have that calming neurotransmitter. And again, we're in crazy brain mode. So look for dyes, and if they say lakes on them, that's a double whammy of no bueno. All right, so what else we got here? We've got, okay, Recap. Dyes we honed on red 40. Aluminum. Aluminum is not just associated with these lakes that are associated with dyes. Aluminum is in things like deodorants. It's in things like yellow cheese. That's why I put the color yellow around the aluminum ring. The cheese that is used for melting, like on what do you call those things? Tortilla. Yes, chips. Those things. Yes, nachos. That's it. Um, any cheese that's used for melting on pizza, basically the fake cheeses, they have traces of aluminum in them. So there's a lot of kid not so friendly food with these toxic loads in them, all have the potential affecting neurodevelopmental plasticity. And the latest in aluminum, actually, I'll back up to aluminum in a minute. Aluminum has been found in a great deal of baby formulas. So now we have the developing brain and these baby formulas and the aluminum overload. It's the accumulation that we worry about, of course. The European brands, Hip, Holly, those brands are said to have less levels, but it is still a concern. And then lead. Lead has been in the news with regard to baby food. Lead higher than any level should be concerning, but levels that they were alarmingly surprised were in baby foods like Gerber, etc. So we have three big toxic loads in food sources that kiddos are eating on a regular basis that we should really be mindful of. This is a great opportunity around these holidays to educate parents and your practice members what's in their food and how potentially does that change the trajectory of neurodevelopment, behavior, attention, and learning for their little fiddle farts. So what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. If you have kiddos that are constantly getting in trouble at school for the same behavioral consequences, that's a good time to try to dig to the roots of what might be going on. A lot of schools, at least in my area, I've done a lot of education in the public school systems around my area. And a lot of teachers are now putting parameters on what can be brought into the classroom for specific holidays. And if we can educate and make that a broader, think about it, if we can make that a universal understanding within our school systems, think about how we can potentially affect the trajectory of behavior, development, attention, learning, et cetera, with the kiddos. And then, of course, we can educate them about neurologically focused chiropractic and bada bing, bada boom, bada bang, save more lives. So that's your learning lesson for today. And again, ChiroSecure, thank you for such an amazing platform. It's so much fun to be here and share and hopefully give you pearls of wisdom to add to your practice on a daily basis, on an ongoing basis. So with that said, Elizabeth and I, we are peacing out. And until next month, oh my gosh, we are going to be in March already. Hopefully it'll be springtime for y'all, wherever you're at. And we'll be back in March with more in the know to optimize neurodevelopment. Until then, keep saving lives, keep turning the tide. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts of your service to humanity. See you later.
Today's pediatrics show, Look to the Children, was brought to you by ChiroSecure.